Hey guys, thanks for stopping by Outdoors with Don and Bob. I wanted to take a minute today and do a review on a small two-man bass boat. It's hard to believe it's been that long ago that I did that. That's why I thought I wanted to come back now and talk to you again about the Sun Dolphin two-man bass boat. I did that video shortly after I got it and hadn't used it that much. Well, now it's 3 years later, and I've had 3 years and a lot of extensive use having that boat in the water. And I thought now's the time to come back and review that again and talk to you a little bit more about it. Now the one I have is the 8-foot version. There is also a 10-footer. I thought the 8-foot was going to be good enough for what I wanted. If you're buying this with the intent there's going to be 2 of you using it, spend the extra and buy the 10-foot. You'll be far happier in the long run. Don't get me wrong, you can fish 2 people in the 8-foot. We've done it quite a bit. But after doing that, I'd say if you're going to spend a lot of time with 2 people, move up to the 10-foot. I think you'll be a lot happier. First thing is, we got to get to the lake. And how are you going to do it? Well, again, I have the 8-footer. So if you're talking this, you're talking, I think it's about 110 pounds, 115, something like that. We're not going to be putting it on top of our car. I suppose you could, but it's not really normal to try to put that up there. Not like you could with a kayak. A kayak usually is 75, 80 pounds, a little bit easier to get that up on a car than this is. I started out in the back of my pickup. Slides in between the wheel wells and the pickup, no problem. Go anywhere out and can get it in with no problem. Now I do have a 4-wheel drive pickup that sits a little higher, and so it's a little bit more getting it up and getting it in. So I thought, hey, let's do a trailer. If you notice that first couple minutes in the video, I'm using a small, I think that was a 4x8 or a 5x10 small flatbed trailer. And I was able to put it on that and use that. Eventually I moved up to a small boat trailer, and what I ended up using was a used jet ski trailer. There's a lot of places around the country for under $250 you can buy a used jet ski trailer. I think I paid $175 for the one I've got. You just put a couple extra boards on it, change it a little bit. It easily holds the two-man bass boat. It's a lot easier to get it on that trailer than it is to get it in the back of the pickup. Hey, if you want to go down a ramp, you can go down a ramp, but in my case, just give me a fairly flat bank next to the lake. I'd back my truck or back my Jeep down there with a two-man bass boat on the back of the trailer, and I could just put it in anywhere in the lake. I didn't have to worry about a ramp. So that worked out pretty good. Now, today, and as you're looking, maybe you're thinking of buying, and that's why you're watching this. Maybe you're also thinking about a kayak. And you decide, do I want to buy a kayak? Do I want to buy a two-man bass boat? So let's look at a little bit of both of those, because my buddy Bob fishes out of a kayak. I fish out of the two-man bass boat, so it's allowed me to see over these last few years kind of a comparison. First off, coolness factor. How do you look when you're out on the lake? Well, there's no comparison here. You always look a little cooler sitting in that kayak than you do sitting up on the two-man bass boat. It kind of, this big square thing sitting in the middle of the lake with you sitting on it doesn't look nearly as cool as a kayak, but you know, that's another thing. But let's take a look at the main reason you buy a boat like this, and that's getting into places where big boats can't. And I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between the kayak and the two-man bass boat. They can both go way back in there, get back in the trees. Neither one of them need very much water. So there, it doesn't really make much difference. Now, if there is one place that might make the biggest difference of all, and that is, are you fishing by yourself? Or do you have a buddy? Or do you have a kid that you're going to be fishing with? Then the two-man bass boat is really so much better, because now one small boat, you get 2 guys on there, you can take your buddy, you can fish it by yourself because it's small enough for that. If you want to take one of the kids along, you can do that. So there, the two-man bass boat's got an advantage if you're looking at more than one person. But again, remember, if you're going to do a lot of that, take a look at that 10-foot boat and spend maybe a little extra money for that. Early in the spring and late in the fall, there becomes a bit of a difference, and it's one I call wet feet. And that is, if you're fishing a kayak, you got to get in the water. If you're fishing a two-man bass boat, you don't have to get your feet wet. So early in the spring when the water temp's in the 50s, or late in the fall when it's in the 50s, it's a little bit nicer with a two-man bass boat because you don't have to wade out into the water in order to get started. How you get around the lake? Hey, at least with a two-man bass boat, a motor, battery, you don't have to paddle all the time. Though I will have to say I've been in some lakes with a lot of vegetation. It's up near the surface and you can't run your motor. It is not easy paddling around a two-man bass boat because of the size, especially when there's a lot of vegetation. So you have the motor, that's going to help you out. You don't have to paddle so much, but you do have to drag the motor, the battery, and everything else down and put it in. But I'll tell you what, I used a 30-pound thrust Minn Kota trolling motor. I think I picked it up at Walmart for $99. It would push that two-man bass boat anywhere around the lake with no problems. Stability is the biggest thing I liked in the two-man bass boat. You can stand up, you can move around. You could probably stand up and try to rock this thing from side to side as hard as you could, and you're not going to tip it over. It has great stability, and that was part of the thing I really liked about this. You know, I know with kayakers, they always say it's not if you're going to roll it, it's when you're going to roll it. And I got rods and reels and tackle, and I figured, hey, I spent pretty good money on rods, reels, tackle, all that type of stuff. I don't need that in the bottom of the lake. So to me, I really like the stability of the two-man bass boat because you don't have to worry so much about losing your stuff or whatever. And I don't like to get out in a bigger lake, in rougher water or stuff like that, but at least if something comes up when you're out in the lake, stability is going to help you out. The place where, if you were comparing buying a kayak versus buying the two-man bass boat, the place where the kayak probably really shines to me, or what I saw, is if it's windy. I know I've been out where Bob and I have been out. He's in his kayak, I'm in a two-man bass boat. Now I'm not talking 30-mile-an-hour winds, I'm talking 10-mile-an-hour winds. Just a light breeze you'd have. Even that light breeze, you sit so much higher in the water with a two-man bass boat, it catches you and it sends you across the lake. Where the kayak sits down there, down in the water a little better. Yeah, they still fight the wind too, but it's not nearly as big of a problem for a kayak as it is for the two-man bass boat just because you're sitting so higher. But the Sun Dolphin two-man bass boat, I've had it for 3 years. I've used it extensively. I loved it. It's done everything I hoped it would do. And admittedly, you know, over this last 3 years, I've had probably 3 other big boats. Seems like every year I keep getting a new, bigger boat. And this last year, we used that a lot more than I did the two-man because we kind of changed where we're fishing. But I really used the two-man a lot, and to me, it's if I had to have something to get in those small spots where I wanted either a two-man bass boat or a kayak, in my personal opinion, I'll take the two-man bass boat every time because I've used it for 3 years. I've spent a lot of time in the water. I know how it works, and I've been really happy with it. So if you're looking to get in a Sun Dolphin two-man bass boat, I don't think you'll be disappointed. At least I know I wasn't. Hey, thanks for sticking with me. Subscribe to our channel if you would. Hope to see you again real soon.